Okay, so we're going to look at how we wire up our control box now, get our server implemented into the mechanism, and put it all together basically. So first things first, this is an Arduino Nano. I'll do another video on how you program this and I'll provide the code. It's really easy. The whistle stop tour of it is we're going to load a program onto this, which sounds pretty daunting. But all it means is we're going to load from Arduino IDE, which it's just a desktop compiler. It's free to download. You plug your Arduino in using the USB-C. The IDE will recognise that you've plugged this in, and then it's basically a case of clicking paste on the code that I've provided, and after that you press one little arrow and it will load it to this board. So got our loaded board, and then in here we've got a hair for a start. That can go. We've got a few little places that we just need to pay some attention to. So obviously this little bit here is where Arduino is going to go. This hole here is for our extension cable, and then we've got our top, which is going to house the switch. So we'll start off with the switch first of all. This is a 13mm hole, so you want a 13mm switch if possible. Again, if not, I can make the hole smaller for you if you want to see a smaller vision. Now we're going to put the switch on before we do anything else. If we don't put the switch on now, we're going to end up making it so that we have to take it all apart again afterwards, which isn't ideal. So do that, and I'm going to bend these contacts out as well, just so that they don't hit the bottom of the box. In the bottom of the box you'll see 4 holes. These are for mounting it to wood. If you want to put something through there, they're about 1mm, these holes. So yeah, like I say, if you want to drill it into something so it's stationary, that's a good one. I just use a bit of Velcro on the back of mine. Anyway, that's that bit done. Let's have a look at our next bit. So we want to get our servo extension cable, which is this one, and you're going to see one end of it will allow us to plug the servo in. The other end of it will be the same as the servo. We don't want this bit, we don't want the bit that's the same as the servo. So I'm going to clip that off. Another tool that I've sneakily left out, wire strippers, and we're just going to snip a bit off there, and we've got our 3 cables. Now, as with most things electrical, you've got black for ground, so I'm just going to twist that up. On this one, red is plus 5 volts, so give that a twist, and white is our signal. Now you'll see that this doesn't correspond perfectly to the colours on most servos. We've got brown, red and orangey yellow. Your brown is your ground, red is still your plus 5 volts, and your orangey yellow is white. But we'll come to that in a bit. So we're going to do the usual thing. We want to get these tinned. I like doing this outside of the box because it's just easier at that point. I like doing as much wiring outside of the box as possible. Obviously a little bit does have to be done in the box, but as much outside the box as possible. There's less chance of me melting the case if I do so. So I'm just going to go in, nothing terribly exciting, just give those a little tin. If you aren't comfortable with soldering, you can also use DuPont cables to connect your servo. I'll show you one of those in a minute. Right, so that's not good, that's a bit too much there. Let me just wick some of that away really quick. Cool, that'll do that. Your DuPont cables are this sort of thing, so if you wanted to do all of this without without soldering. These are going to be your friends. Yeah, it's still going to be hard. I think you will still have to do a little bit of soldering, but if you didn't want to use this box, you did something else, you just plug this into the header pins on the Arduino. Right, so next thing to do is we need to get this cable into the box. So just pop it through, all three of those through the circular hole. Get that, and we can take loads of it through. We can pull bits out afterwards. And then here there's like a little bridge, and this is just strain leaf for the cable. We don't want a direct connection to the Arduino from outside of the box, because you're just introducing strain to soldered joints really, and we don't want to be doing that. It's bad practice. It's going to make it so that it doesn't last very long. There we go. So we're going to get those three through there, all nice and tidy. Other people do it by putting knots in and stuff like that. I prefer to keep it like this. Right, so we're going to talk about the pins now. It's nice and simple. All of the pins have some sort of number on them, and you can see here we've got ground there, ground here, and we're going to be using ground here, 5V, so that's for 5 volts. We're going to use the ground here and D2, there for the switch, and then D3 is for the servo. So I'm going to start off by putting my my servo together. So we've got our 3 wires, and we're going to go in through the top, so down. And I'm going to start off with the ground. So pop the ground through the hole there, and again use a helping hand for this, because you end up pulling it out. Use a helping hand for this, or some sort of circuit holder. I'm doing it rough and ready at the moment, so I'm just gonna wing it on my my bench top. Get a little bit of solder on there. Oop. And get it onto that pad. So there we go. Soldered that bit. Let's give it just a little reflow, make it nice and neat. There we go. Right, so that's grounding. Now I'm going to do my 5 volts. So that's the 5 volt pin, and the red wire goes to it. That's there. And this gets easier once you've got one wire in. Always gets a little bit easier. And again, I'm soldering quite blind here because I'm doing this through a phone and with very shaky hands at the moment. So let's have a look. Ignore my terrible soldering practices at the moment. Okay, another one through there. I'm going to give those a little clip. Keep it nice and tidy. We don't want to be leaving extra bits of metal where we don't want it. I say as I chuck a bit of metal into the enclosure. Right, and then like I said, our white cable is going to go to pin number 3, or D3, on this one. So I think actually I can make life a little bit easier for myself by doing the old snip stand, and then we'll give it a little bit of solder. That'll do. Lovely. And I'm going to clip the excess again. Right, the next step is our switch. So again, it doesn't really matter which way round these wires go. So I like keeping with conventions because I'm a stickler. I'm a boring person when it comes to that kind of thing. So I'm going to put my black wire to ground, which is here. and I'm going to pop my red wire into D2, which is just next to it, between D2 and the ground. And actually I'm just going to do one at a time here because it'll be a little easier to manage. Pop that on, shaky hand soldering again, and there we go. Next one is our ground. I'm just gonna do that. If at all you have any questions, I'm going to support this project. You know, I will always offer any help I can with this sort of thing. It's part of the hobby, I think, is talking to people. So now there's a few ways to do this. You can it is a pretty tight fit, so you want to go in USB end first and then just clip it down at the end here, and that will hold. It's pretty tough. Obviously, if you wanted to, you can get your pin vise out here or here, and chuck a little M1 screw through there, or an M2 bolt down into the plastic, and just let it tap into the plastic. That's fine. I'm just leaving this as is for the purposes of this demonstration. And now, if you want to tidy up, you know, push the cables into places you like. And now, bear in mind with this enclosure, there's one small corner, 3 large corners. Small corner is your top left, and we're going to go down and close it. And that is all the wiring done for this now. For this, you know, you can pop a bit of super glue around the edge if you want something more permanent. Again, I pop M1, M2 screws through, you know, drill the top out to 2mm, drill these holes out to 1.5, and you can tap into it with an M2. But there it is, there's your control box all sorted. We're going to have a quick look at putting the servo in. So we're going to implement the servo into the bottom of our tippler. Now we're going to get servo here, just our standard one, and you want to make it so that the wires are at this end. Okay, so they're pointing that way. Now you can just have this dangling out the bottom. I don't like that because we're going to have a moving mechanism here. You know, as things tipple, you can see that parts come through the back of it. Don't really want the wires getting tangled up in that, so I like using the little channel that I've got here. So just going to pop it through. It's a bit of a tight fit, but it does get there. And again, you can tie a little knot here if you want to. If you want to leave some cable strain relief. It's not as important on this one. Now we're going to open up our little bag of screws and servo horns. Now we have to use a custom servo horn for this, which I will show you how to 3D print in another video. It's nice and easy, it just involves a layer stop, but it's easily the best way. So the parts we're going to use out of our little baggie of servo parts are the 3 screws and the single servo horn, but we'll come to the servo horn later. First things first, you want to get the screws that have the collars on. So these are the ones that are designed for attaching the servo to the base plate, and this is a bit finicky. A magnetized screwdriver helps a lot in this situation. So as you'll see on the side here, we've got 3 holes. The 2 outer holes are for screwing in the servo. So I'm going to get my screw here, pop it through in there, so you can just sort of see it there, and then screwdriver comes down through the top. We'll try and grab the end of the screw. As you can see, it's a bit of a faff, but not too bad. Again, non-magnetised tweezers are a very good tool to have for this. But there we go, and then just a little bit of pressure, because this is going to be biting into the plastic. We are threading it as we go. Again, try not to press it down onto the table, we don't want to snap anything. So I'm just holding it by the base, holding the servo in place, and we'll screw this all the way down to the bottom. Again, don't need to over tighten it, there's not any massive forces going on here, but we just want it to be held firmly in place for when we move the motion. So that's nearly there. Still got a little bit of play in it. There we go, nice and tight at that end. Maybe a little more. There we go. Cool. I'm going to put that there, and we repeat for the other side. So get my screw, pop it through the hole, and there is a little hole already in this plastic. You're not just going straight into solid plastic. There's a little hole for you to tap into. Again, if it's a bit too tight still, then get a little drill bit in a pin vise and just open that out to, you know, 1 mil to 1.5 mil. Probably wouldn't go as far as 2 mil. And again, if you want to really sort of secure it, then you're going to have to add a little bit of super glue around the edges, and that's absolutely fine. It doesn't make any difference. That's essentially the build. Now the last bit we've got to do is get our little servo horn and turn it into a big servo horn, and then we're going to use our forestry wire to connect it all. So I'll show you that in the next video.